Hi, so we're working in chapter 2, and that's organizing data, and section 2.3 is organizing quantitative data. So we want to move on to stem and leaf, and we're on page 13 in the notes on Blackboard. Okay, so I just reproduced the data set here, and this data is the number of days to maturity for 24 short-term investments. And I'm going to build a stem and leaf. I know some of you've seen stem and leaf before in, I think, middle school MCAS or somewhere along, and maybe some of you haven't. But I do think it is one of those things. We're going to build it, and then we're going to worry about the details later. So we are going to find the smallest and largest value in the data set, the smallest number of days to maturity and the largest number of days to maturity. All right, so let's see. I think 38 might be the smallest. And we've got a 95, we got a 99. And I'm thinking that might be the largest. So the smallest is 38 and the largest is 99. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and build and form stems. So stems are the leaves are the rightmost digit, and everything else forms your stem. Okay, so the leaf here is an 8, and the 3 is the stem. And then we're going to come down here, and it goes all the way up to the 99, so that the 9 is the leaf and the 9 is the stem. So I'm going to make one stem for each number, and this is a place where I could give you a heads up. Even if I have no 50s, I have to include the 5. Even if I have, so even if there's one of these that is absent in the data, we include all of the stems. We don't leave them out because that's going to help us to understand the shape of the data. We don't want to, if there's a gap in the data, we definitely want to see it. All right, so I'm going to go through this data, and I am going to look, so I take the 70, and now I'm going to look for the stem of 70, and I'm going to add a leaf of 0 next to it. I'm going to go through each data point and add the leaves. And as I do so, these rows will grow and be somewhat like the height of the histogram, okay? And for that to be helpful to us, we have to attempt to try to keep the leaves kind of stacked up. So we don't want to have like really small digits on one leaf and really fat digits on another one. We want to keep them pretty much consistent. And this is a place where neatness matters, so you know I try. I don't always try, certainly don't always succeed, but you need to know where it matters, and here is a place where it matters. Okay, so the next data point is 64, 99, 55, 89, so adding each of those second digits to the appropriate stem, 87, so I'm going to come over here, and 65. So trying to get each of these columns to be about the same width. All right, I'm going to get a few more data points up here, and then we'll take a middle of the streaming data and look and see if we can figure things out, and then we'll finish it up. So we'll go ahead and do a little bit more. 62, 38, 67, 70. Okay, let's stop here. Looks to me like it's about halfway. We don't really have to stop halfway, but we can. Remember what we're looking for: center, spread, and shape. So in this data, I think the center is somewhere in the 60s. I think the spread is between 38 and 99. And the shape, it is beginning to show a little bit of a bell shape. So as we kind of move through the course, we'll do a lot of questioning about whether a distribution has a bell shape or not. And so that's one of the more important distributions that we'll be working with in statistics. And I certainly begin here to see the immersion of the bell shape. Okay, I'm going to remove that and finish up our stem and leaf, and then we'll answer those questions again. Center, spread, and shape. Okay. 60, 69, 78, 39, trying to line it up, 75, 56, 71, 51, 99, 68, 95, and 86. Okay, so that's our stem and leaf. Okay, and again, we still see the center maybe to be more between the 60 and the 70 now that the data is complete. We still see somewhat of a bell, but maybe not as symmetric as we saw halfway through, so maybe it's got an asymmetry to it in terms of shape, but the spread is certainly somewhere between 38 and 99. This is a stem and leaf. One of the things you might want to do in a stem and leaf, because at some point we might need to order, well, at some point we will need to order a data set. And chapter 3, we will be looking for a statistic called the median. And the median is the middle data point. And in order to find it, you need to have an ordered data set. Now, I can't order these numbers just straight out. I would always get it wrong. Might be a couple of people in this classroom that every time they see a set of numbers that big, they can write it down in order. But I'm not one of them, and I am sure that 30 out of 32 of us are going to be more like me. So what I can do is I can form a stem and leaf, and then I can form an ordered stem and leaf. So let's go ahead and do that. And so the challenge now is just to order the few digits that are on each stem. So it makes it a little easier to get an idea. So I'm going to reproduce the stem and leaf, or at least this stem structure. And then on each row, I just have to order. So the first row is in order already. There's nothing on the fourth, the 40s, then the 50s. I have a 1, a 5, and a 6. And over here, I have a 0 on the 6th row, a 2, a 4, a 5, a 7, and a 9. 70, 0, 0, 1, 5, 8, 6, 8, 7, and 9, and the final stem has a 5 and a 9 and a 9. All right. So we now have produced an ordered stem and leaf. And what can we do with it? Let's go ahead and find the median, even though we don't, it's not really part of chapter 2. Let's do it anyway. So I need to know how many data points there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 23 data points. Well, if there's 23 data points, there are the middle one. If I divide this by 2, it's 11.5, right? So the middle one's going to be between 11 and 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So somewhere between 69 and 70 is the center of the data. All right, that's a preview. I'm going to take that off the board. We don't have to worry about medians right now. We'll come back to that again in chapter 3. But we do have to worry about stem and leaves and ordered stem and leaves. Okay. So I am going to move on to another data set in the notes. Let's see, I reproduced it here from page 14. We have data on cholesterol levels. So just going there. So what I want to do is I'm going to produce the stem and leaf for this data, and then I'm going to discuss how we might change the stem and leaf. We have some procedures called splitting stems. So, but we'll first start with the stem and leaf for this cholesterol data. So you guys can go ahead and get started. I'll build it here as well. We start with the largest and the smallest value in the data set. There's 199, that's the smallest. So these are cholesterol levels for people that have high cholesterol, high level patients. So that's why these numbers are up there, close to 200 and above 200, because that's a boundary for defining. 200 is the boundary to define high, at least, maybe not. I haven't read the literature lately on this. So, but that's what it used to be. And I think the highest one is the 221 maybe. Okay, if I'm wrong, we'll figure it out as we form the stem and leaf. So 199, the rightmost digit is the 9, and the other two digits form the leaf. So 199, we're going to put the 19 here. So my stems go 19, 20, 21, and 22. And now I have to build out my leaves. So that's some nice rows here. Okay, so we'll work on that. You guys, it would be great if you could practice along with me in the notes or in a notebook, because it's the kind of practice that really does makes it, first of all, easier to stay awake for the videos. And also it helps you prepare for your quizzes and tests. So 210, 209, 212, 208, 217, 207, 210, 203, 208, 210, 210, 199, 115, I'm sorry, 215, 221, 213, 218, 202, 218, 200, and 214. All right, hope I got that right. This is the stem and leaf. We go to those important questions. Where is the center? So if I look at this, I think the center might be somewhere between 200 and 218, right? Maybe. Not quite sure. I mean, that's kind of a broad range given the data, but that's what I can see from just looking at the stem and leaf. What's the shape? Well, everything's piled up here, so not really sure either. So, and the spread, we can see that the data goes from 199 to 221. What I want to do is discuss, well, the first thing I'm going to do is order the stems. That might help us as we move forward to splitting the stems. So let's go ahead and just reproduce this as an ordered stem and leaf. So we have to order just the few numbers on each row. All right, so now we have an ordered stem and leaf. Make it a little easier for us to split. Now there's something about the number of digits that are represented in each of the stems, and there are 10 digits, 0 through 9, on each of the stems. And so we kind of know that 10 equals 2 times 5. So we can take 5 digits on the front, we can take each stem and break it down into 2 stems by having, let's do that. So there'll be 2 stems for the 19s, 2 stems for the 20s, 2 stems for the 21s, and 2 stems for the 22s. How are we going to do that? Well, we have 10 digits, so the first 5 digits will go to the first stem and the first row in the stem, and the second 5 digits will go to the second. So if we look at the numbers from that are represented here, the digits go from 0 to 9. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the first row, and 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 for the second row. So that's how I'm going to split it. So we'll go over here. There is nothing on this guy. There's none of these digits, 0 to 4, in that first stem, but the second row has a 9. So we'll put that here. So now I'm going to look at this row, at this stem, and I'm going to take everything from the 0, the 2, and the 3 and put it here. And then I'm going to take the 7, 8, 8, and 9. Again, working to keep my my digits about the same width and lining them up into the columns there. Okay. So that I managed to split the 20, and now I'm going to go down to the 21s. And I see that's where it breaks. So I have everything less than, everything between 0 and 4 go on my first row. And everything else, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, but in this case, 5, 7, 8, 8, go on the second row. And we're gonna go ahead and split this guy up, but he only has a 1, and it goes here because it's on the beginning. So actually, this is the split stem and leaf. We do not need to include the first and last rows if they have no data on them. So this is the stem and leaf. And what we want to do is go back to those questions, because we want to determine which representation of the data helps you most in determining center, spread, and shape. So now when I look at this, I feel more confident. I have a better idea that the center of the data is around 210 to 214. So in that, it's a smaller range, a better understanding of the center than when I was looking over here. Okay, and then also I note this nice, you always want to see if there's a bell shape. I see one emerge quite nicely here. So I'll want to stick with that. Now there's one more way you can split the stems. I can take each stem, what I did here, I took each stem and I broke it up into 2, but I can take each stem and break it up into 5, and then there will only be 2 digits on each stem. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And we'll see if it's even better if we split the stems one more time. So each stem is going to go into 5, and how are they going to break out? It's going to be a 0 and a 1, a 2 and a 3. These digits live on the same. So this is how we're going to cluster the data. So the first I'm gonna pull off zeros and ones, digits, I'm gonna pull off twos and threes. Okay, so I'm gonna do this here. We already know that we're only really using the bottom one, but putting it all up there. Okay, so I want to split my stems one more time, and this time each of my rows is only going to represent 2 digits. And we're going to see if the representation of the data is any clearer than in these other 2 representations. So I have 0, 1, no. I'm going to go down here. I only have a 9, so he lives there. So this row is going to get zeros and 1, so there's a 0. This row is going to get 2 and 3, so there's a 2 and a 3. And this row is going to get 4s or 5s, nothing, and 6s and 7s. So I have nothing for these 2 rows, and that's the process. And 8 and 9. So I'm basically taking these 2 rows, and I want to bring them up here, and I think I misspoke, because in fact I have a 7 and I have 2 8s and a 9. So these 2 rows got split to these 5 rows. And let's get ahead again on the 20s, the 0s and 1s, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and then the next, that was 0, 1. You don't have to put these nut digits on the left when you build your stem and leaf, but it makes it a little easier for me once things get a little, there's kind of a lot going on here, so I sometimes need that guidance. It says there's a 2 and a 3, and this row is supposed to have 4s and 5s, so it's a 4 over here and a 5 over there. This row is 6s and 7s, so I have a 7, and the last 21 houses 8s and 9s, and I have 2 8s. And for 22, 0s and 1s, that's the only one. So again, we run into this situation where we can kind of get rid of some of these empty rows and take a minute and look at the new stem and leaf. It doesn't make it any easier to identify the stem. The center. Well, I think it's kind of helpful, like we can see the center, but it's actually a little easier for me over here. And the spread, it's still equivalent to find the spread, but the shape has kind of disappeared, right? It's not so clear that we have that bell shape when we split the stems into a 5-row stem and leaf. So I like this guy. If I was presenting this data to a client, the process I would go through is pretty much what we did here. We would go through all possible expressions of the graphical display, and sometimes you don't know that it's best until you've passed it and you have to come back. So you have to do extra work. Remember, our job is to make the story of the data as easy to understand as possible. As a matter of fact, usually what happens when data is presented very well is that nobody ever understood. It was hard. They don't get it, that it was hard at all. They look at the data and they look at your nice little tables and graphs and they're like, oh, that's obvious. And that's just what you want. You want all the hard work that goes behind to be behind and not obvious to the reader, to the client, whoever, to your lab professor who's reading your lab reports, right? So we always want to make it as easy to understand as possible. Okay, and that's what we have for stem and leaf.